The first drops of rain strike a patch of dry soil, and before the ground even looks wet, the air changes. An earthy scent rises almost immediately, strong enough to travel far ahead of the actual shower. The common explanation, that wet soil simply smells stronger, ignores the mechanics of transport. Molecules must physically leave the ground and enter the air to reach the nose. Yet soil can store these compounds for months without releasing them into the atmosphere. In 1964, Australian researchers Isabel Joy Baer and Richard Grenfell Thomas gave this familiar scent a name, Petrichor. They found that dry surfaces slowly accumulate oily compounds produced by plants, which are then released by moisture. A major contributor to this mixture is a compound called Geosmin, produced by soil-dwelling bacteria and fungi. Humans are biologically wired to detect it. The human nose can pick up geosmin at concentrations as low as a few parts per trillion. Identifying geosmin tells us what the smell is, but it leaves the physical transition unexplained. A molecule trapped on a soil grain cannot reach a nose until it is detached and launched into the air. For 50 years, descriptions of petrichor skipped over this mechanical step. Science recognized that rain hit the soil and a smell appeared, but the engine required to bridge that gap remained invisible. In 2015, MIT researchers Joung and Cullen Buie used high-speed cameras to observe water droplets hitting manufactured porous materials, revealing the exact mechanics of the impact. This cross-section shows that as the liquid hits the ground, the outer edge spreads outward, while the center remains slightly elevated. As the edges seal against the surface, the droplet traps a thin pocket of air. The downward force of the drop compresses that air pocket until it shatters into microscopic bubbles. These bubbles then rise rapidly through the interior of the liquid raindrop. When they reach the upper surface, they rupture, firing a jet of liquid and microscopic particles into the atmosphere. Under optimal conditions, a single falling drop can fire over 100 of these fine aerosol droplets in a fraction of a second. The physical impact converts the water droplet into a miniature aerosol generator. This mechanical process relies on a specific balance of variables, which is why the scent is not present in every storm. Highly porous surfaces like sand absorb air too quickly for bubbles to form, while completely flat surfaces cause the drop to splash apart before trapping an air pocket. Impact speed is equally critical. Light to moderate rain creates significantly more aerosols because the violent force of a heavy downpour tends to destroy the bubble formation. Saturated soil also ends the process. Once a continuous liquid film develops across the ground, the air entrapment mechanism is disabled. The smell of rain is a sensory record of transition, peaking while dry, porous ground is actively being converted into wet ground. The researchers then tested whether these ejected microdroplets carried material up from the ground or consisted only of clean rainwater. By applying fluorescent dyes to the surfaces, they confirmed that the resulting aerosols contained physical substances collected directly from the ground below. The next phase involved seeding soil with fluorescently labeled bacteria to see if living cells could survive the launch mechanism. This visualization shows the potential impact. A single raindrop transfers roughly 0.01% of the bacteria beneath it. Scaled up by the millions of drops in a moderate storm, the combined biological transfer is substantial. These laboratory tests were conducted under controlled conditions, and the results do not automatically imply that rain spreads disease in wild environments. However, the experiment establishes the physical capacity for rain to move viable, living microorganisms from the soil into the atmosphere without the help of wind-blown dust. This ground-level launch is distinct from the sharp, metallic smell of ozone, which often arrives early when storm downdrafts pull atmospheric chemistry toward the surface. Once these aerosols clear the still boundary layer of the soil, wind pushes them horizontally, carrying the scent for miles ahead of the actual storm. For just a few fleeting moments, every single patch of dry soil transforms into a microscopic bubble launcher. This scent represents the Earth's buried chemistry and biology in transit, a momentary airborne launch of the landscape itself.